The amount of people that I see that, you'll come up to them, I don't do a lot of selling anymore, but they come up to the staff and go, oh, I wouldn't want your job. And for me, realizing what it does for the staff and everybody, you do 6 weeks in that job, your life's changed forever because there's a scoreboard. You have to do the things required to get consistent results.
Right.
And that means mastering your attitude. That means being grateful. That means learning, really learning how to read people, learning how to build rapport and get people to like you, learning how to control a conversation, learning how to be persistent, which is really tough for a lot of people. These are all really core business skills.
Right. And doing all those things quite quickly, yeah?
Yeah, very much. Really in the deep end. So it's this very immersive experience, and that's why it sort of shapes people. But I find it funny. People go, I wouldn't want your job, and I instantly get the flashback of, you seen the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, and he goes, oh, I wouldn't want to fight him, and he puts the helmet on, and that's why no one will remember your name.
Hey legends, welcome to another episode of the Interchange podcast, and thanks for joining me, your host Ben Lowe. Now, before we go any further, I do have a very small favor to ask, and that is if you haven't already and you've been enjoying the content, please don't forget to go and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to share this with just one of your friends, because the more eyes we get on this and the more subscribers for the platform, the bigger and better guests I'm going to be able to give you and the more value that's going to bring for you guys. But over into the episode now. So my next guest is a best-selling author, an MMA fighter, and also the CEO of one of the biggest face-to-face sales companies in Australia. But not only that, Efcomm, which is his company, just won Best Place to Work in Australia all round. So let me introduce to you Barratt Kennett. Now, the thing that I love about Barratt is not his sales expertise or nothing to do with business at all, really. It's his ability to be able to put the right pegs in the right holes. And when I say the right pegs in the right holes, I mean the right people in the right places to help them to excel and grow, as he has done time and time again within his own workplace and also with people around him in his own life. So I actually was very intrigued by a lot of the conversation we had here where we're talking about psychology and the way that the human mind works. So if you're into that kind of stuff, this is the podcast for you. I'll see you over in the episode. Take number 3. Let's try that again. Barratt, brother, really appreciate you coming out, having a yarn on the Interchange podcast today, bro. How are you, my friend?
I'm feeling good. Feeling really good, yeah.
Probably even better because you just got a massive accomplishment with your business being rated #1 business to work for in Australia.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Tell me more about that, bro. How does that take place?
Well, they do. So the company's called Great Place to Work. So they're the main one in Australia that does, it's international, but that's sort of the biggest one that recognizes company culture and employee satisfaction. So basically, do your staff like working there? Yeah. And it rates it across a lot of different categories. And I think that, where we may have been a little deficient in terms of flexibility or, where other companies have it, what I've always focused on was if your guys are having fun, they're making money and they're growing. And that's the big one, is that they're, even if it's not so much their, if they're not progressing in their career, which they realistically they should be as well, their skills are leveling up at all times. So I think just making people feel, even though what we do isn't an easy job, like my cousin's husband, who's the coolest guy I've ever met in my life, his job, he literally drives a golf buggy around the hospital and once a week has to fight off a crackhead, and the rest of the time he spends just cruising around.
He definitely doesn't work on the Gold Coast then.
That's an easy job. Like this, what we do, it's not an easy job, but it's fulfilling. And I think that something that I'm really excited about in terms of winning that, that category was it's showing people that easy isn't good. If you really want to feel fulfilled, you need to do something that challenges you and demands more of you. And I think that's probably what I'm most stoked about, is I want to be able to create a place where people go, hey, why are all those guys, why do they always end up so successful, or why are they always so happy? Because we've had 9 people in 6 years of operation, 5 coming up on 6 years. 9 of our staff have gone and started their own successful businesses after working with us for a year. And I'm thrilled about it, because me being able to say that gets better people in the door, as we go. But it really is showing that if you want to grow, you can't do that in a comfort zone. And I know that's something that you sort of teach as well.
Massively, brother, massively. Speaking of comfort zone, what you guys do is actually pretty out of the comfort zone for most people. So door knocking.
Yeah.
How did that come about? So how did you start a business in door knocking and then become so successful doing it?
It's actually a pretty cool story, because I initially started out, I was working in nightclubs because I was fighting at the time. I was fighting professionally at the time. And obviously you can't work in the daytimes if you're taking your training really seriously. So I was just working promotions in nightclubs, doing hosting. Basically, I would just try and get all the pretty girls in for free and then just make the line really big. And there's worse jobs to have.
Yeah, definitely.
But I I ended up getting fired from that because what I was doing a thing called greasing the door, where you basically, you pack the line, because I was really good at just making it hyped and packing the lineup for the nightclubs. Yeah. And then you'd look for all the guys with money or groups with money, and you just go, you guys coming in? They go, oh, not with that line. And you go, yeah, just put 50 each in a handshake. I'll walk you straight through. Which I used to make a lot of money doing. I mean, a lot at the time. It was like, an extra $1,000 a week was better than a poke in the eye.
Yeah, 100%. Bloody gypsy.
But then, I got caught doing that, and I went out a couple of nights later and just ran into some random guy. And we just sort of, the universe just kind of smushed us together. Yeah. And he literally just said, what are you doing now? I go, no, nothing really. He goes, you do sales? And I go, he's a very intense guy. And I was like, no. And he goes, you'd be good at sales. And I was like, thanks. He goes, do you want to do sales? And I was like, okay. Right. And so I got into the job, and it was literally just selling, the guys you see in the shopping centers just hustling. Yep. So it wasn't actually door to door. I was doing shopping centers to start. And it was just one of those things that I just like, every so often you stumble onto something you were meant for.
I hear that loud and fucking clear, bro.
Yeah.
Loud and clear, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was very lucky because that guy, it turns out he's one of the best ever. Yeah. Absolute nutcase. Like, I think he ended up getting deported from Australia. He's a Kiwi guy. Like, definitely not in terms of integrity, not the best guy, which, you do sometimes find in sales. But just set this incredible, like the average person gets maybe, in my industry, gets about 2 to 5 signups a day, right? And he did 9 in front of me on my first day. And so by the end of my first week, I did 16, which was, it was pretty good for anybody.
Really
but
big, bro,
but he says to me, he goes, all right, well, we're going to Logan Hyperdome, which wasn't like anywhere special, but he hyped it up, and he goes, so I reckon we can do 100 next week. And he's got these big eyes. And he was like, okay, cool. And my second ever week, he did 49 and I did 51. He was winning, but we got drunk on the Thursday and he couldn't back it up, right? And it turns out only maybe 1% of people in the industry get 50 in a week. Yeah. And so, but because, and that's called the Pygmalion theory, is the idea that whatever standard you set for somebody, they'll meet that standard. Right. Because he set that standard for me, I literally only knew how to be excellent because I didn't know anything else. Yeah. So I was very fortunate in that regard to have that on me right away. Yep. And then I did it for nine months or so, and I was, was setting records, and it was a very fun experience, and I had, the people around me were pushing me to be better. But I got a degree. I got a double major in marketing and market communication because I wanted to work in advertising. Yep. And so, I quit because I wanted to get a real job, even though I was making
a real job.
Yeah, because I was making good money and I was having fun and I was being challenged. But you've got these presuppositions in your head about what face-to-face sales and direct sales is.
Yeah, we get told that like sales and money in general is bad, right?
Yeah, but particularly like shopping center and door knocking guys. The amount of people that I see that, you'll come up to them, I don't do a lot of selling anymore, but they come up to the staff and go, oh, I wouldn't want your job. And for me, realizing what it does for the staff and everybody, you do 6 weeks in that job, your life's changed forever. Yeah. Because there's a scoreboard. You have to do the things required to get consistent results. Right. And that means mastering your attitude. That means being grateful. That means learning, really learning how to read people, learning how to build rapport and get people to like you, learning how to control a conversation, learning how to be persistent, which is really tough for a lot of people. These are all really core business skills.
Right. And doing all those things quite quickly, yeah?
Yeah, very much. Really in the deep end. So it's this very immersive experience, and that's why it sort of shapes people. But I find it funny. People go, I wouldn't want your job, and I instantly get the flashback of, you seen the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, and he goes, oh, I wouldn't want to fight him, and he puts the helmet on, and that's why no one will remember your name.
Hey, hello. Sorry for interrupting your podcast, but I just wanted to quickly jump on and tell you about the must-have personal development tool for 2023, and it's called the Happier, Healthier You Journal. So I'll take you back to about 6 years ago. I'd just gotten out of jail for the last time and was starting my journey of personal development and growth. There was heaps of gurus, heaps of information available, but so much so that it became confusing. So I came up with the Happier, Healthier You Journal to help you to navigate what can be an absolute minefield. From the very get-go, you open the page and it'll challenge you to dive deep with self-assessments, daily activities, and check-ins to figure out exactly where you're at, where you'd like to be. And then from there, the journal becomes the tool to help you to bridge that gap. So to get your hands on this, click on the link below and don't forget to use Interchange 10 at checkout for a cheeky 10% off. I'll see you back over on the episode.
Yeah. And anyone that people that don't take the jobs, sometimes we'll get people in, not so much anymore because our branding's so good and obviously the awards and all that help.
Yeah.
But you still get people that'll apply for the job and then we'll offer them a position. They go, actually, I want this, this more glamorous, more whatever job. And in my head, I'm just like, you don't want to be successful. You say you want to learn the things and you've got the golden opportunity, which I think having that level of certainty, because you got to remember when you're, as a business owner, interviewing for positions, that's a sale.
Yeah.
Right. And
everything's a sell.
And it's the same skills that I remembered learning, 10 years ago, learning how to sell from when I was like stripping back in the day. Right. To now,
everything's a sell.
It's all, not that I strip for interviews, you
don't?
No.
Okay.
I think
what about that one that we did? That was off the books, right?
That was role play. That's but it's really having that level of certainty in what you're offering people. It's I saw it was an interview. He calls it the 120 principle, and where he says if I believe when I'm selling something, I got to believe that I'm giving you $100 and you're only giving me $20. That I'm asking you to give me $20 for $100 note. That's when you believe in what you're selling that much. People have a hard time, and they'll test you. They'll test you for congruency here and there, but they have a hard time saying no. And I think for the right people for us, and it's really only two things. If we're looking for good staff, and I think this is why the culture is so good, is because we don't hire people we wouldn't have a beer with on our own.
I hear that, man. Yeah, these are the people you surround yourself with for a big portion of the week.
Well, it really is a factor of, and I think that's part of the allure, is that everyone's motivated, because there's the two H's that we look for, right? You got to be hungry and humble, right? Yeah. Because number one, I can't teach you to be motivated, and if my leaders are spending their time trying to motivate you rather than just hiring motivated people, you're wasting a lot of time and effort to do that. So I think that the hunger, I need people with an above average desire to be successful, and also I need coachability. Yeah. Right. And one of the questions, the easiest way to tease that out in an interview, you get them bigging themselves up a bit and telling you about their accomplishments. And then you go, because one of the questions I like to ask is like, look, if you want a winning team, you need a team full of winners. So what have you done in your life to demonstrate you're an achiever? Have you won any competitions?
Yeah. Okay. And almost like true, like trying to see if they have much grit.
Well, what if somebody has won some sort of competitive sport or any sort of real hard competition? What do they have? They're competitive. They're tenacious, right? They don't blame anybody when things go wrong because they need to learn how to grow from their failure. They stay where they are, right? And frankly, they're just tough. They don't get down on themselves. They don't think something goes wrong and they don't go, I suck, I give up. They go, I did something wrong. How can I get better? So we'll tease out that and get them bigging themselves up, and then I'll say, now look, it is easy to tell me, about your strengths in an environment like this. Can you tell me a little bit about your weaknesses? And I don't give a shit. I don't care. This is a swearing podcast?
Fuck yes.
Great. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what they say. So I've been doing a few podcasts lately. So it's been like, everyone's got slightly different rules, but I don't really give a shit what they say. I want to see how quickly they say something. Yeah. Because what you'll find is the people that come across really good, but really they're narcissistic. They either can't come up with something, or it'll take them, it's a good question. And you watch the eye just darting like...
You see all the stuff coming up in their head, but they don't want to talk about it. It's almost like they can't take ownership of the shit that they feel might be an insecurity for them, right?
And they'll, more often than not, they'll end up giving you like another strength. So they'll be like, I don't
know, but I'm pretty good at.
Yeah. No, it's not even like that. They'll be like, look... One thing is I tend to really focus on things. Like I tend to like get really just too like, I really like to win. I just find I might be too competitive. It's like, those are good traits. Why? So even just that, if they've aced the whole, rest of the interview, because I leave it at the end because you sort of soften them up a bit. Once they get to that last one, if I can tell that they are either not hungry, or which you get at the start, I literally just go, so what ideally are you looking for yourself at the moment? Before, I don't even build rapport. I don't even get to know them a bit. It's just straight into it. And because you want to try and catch them off guard. And they go, and if they go, I want to learn sales, that's a hire, right? Or if they go,
green light.
Yeah, I really want, or I call it 3 C's, right? So cash, career, culture. Yeah. If they want to make money, right? Which again shows motivation. If they want to grow personally or professionally, which is a career, or they just want to add value to something bigger than themselves, because those players are really good in a team as well. That's what you're looking for. But anything else, you go, what ideally are you looking for yourself at the moment? And they go, my last job sucked. My last employer was this. It's like, get out of here. If the worst one you can do is they go, I just want something full time. Yeah. It's like, well, you don't belong here. Like,
I'm happy to just get the paycheck.
Yeah. It's
I don't want to perform. I just want the paycheck.
And they're telling you right away that that's your Gen Z millennial, give me everything and I don't have to do anything mentality,
Give me my $1,000 a week. I don't care about commissions. I'm probably just going to go out and walk around and maybe smoke some pot behind the house.
Nothing more dangerous in a sales organization than people that don't make commissions. People who don't make commissions. Because what it shows you is that they're comfortable, they're complacent, and that's a cancer in any organization, especially in sales.
Massively, bro. Yeah. Massively. Now, you're a pretty confident guy. That really comes across in the podcast, man. Have you always been confident? Like, as a child, what was it like for you growing up? Did you have good role models to teach you the leadership skills that you have?
So what I've noticed in especially because most of my job is like performance psychology, right? Because we've got all the systems in place and all the leaders are really good, and I don't have to do much anymore. And so most of what I'm doing is basically mentoring and helping people either figure out how to get to where they want faster or how to overcome the things that are in their way. And this is one thing that I've realized is coming from a nuclear family with parents that loved me, which is, don't get me wrong, we had our fair of struggles. Like, it's not like, life's been a cakewalk for me, but it's had its ups and downs for sure. But having especially a dad that just loved me unconditionally, but still was able to hold boundaries with me, 90% of people being fucked up comes from, and it's normally from the dad, right? That either wasn't there, didn't love them, didn't know how to love them, was emotionally volatile or abusive, right? And this one is particularly prevalent for women in relationships, right? Is they didn't say no to them, right? It really does a lot. Having a dad that I wouldn't say spoils you, but just never sets boundaries, sets terrible. Like, you see a lot of one of my good mates is a guy named Mark Rosenfeld. He runs a business called Make Him Yours. So he's one of the top 3 dating coaches for women in the world, and best guy you've ever met in your life. Literally one of the most genuine, sweet human beings, and just so organically him. He doesn't need to impress anybody. He's just a great bloke. And that's one of the things that I read his book. So the book's called Make Him Yours. But it's this like bright pink book with like a cover on it. And I remember, because I do a lot of reading on planes. And I read, because you got to read your mate's books, right? And I just caught the eye of this like tradie bloke, and he looked me up and down, and he just went, ugh. Like, and I couldn't be like, no, it's my mate's. But I said to cop it on the chin.
He's got to own it.
But it is. And so I think that, what a lot is and it's not to say that you can't be confident without a stable father figure. It doesn't have to be a lot of people's parents, pass away or bail or whatever. Having a stable father figure, someone that in your life that really cares about you and loves you. I just think it's like steroids for business. Right. It really is. Like,
I met your dad. He's a fucking legend, bro.
He's the GOAT. He's the best human being in the history of the world. And I think just being able to have someone who understood me, and no matter how bad I screwed up was there, I would be lying if I told you that, my confidence comes from, affirmations and good routine and, all of that. And that is to say, if you, a very easy confidence hack is have a code that you abide by and be disciplined, right? Because if you've got morals and discipline towards something, that's going to hack almost all of your neurochemistry to keep you as happy as possible. But from the internal side is just being brought up knowing that I was enough. Like, that's 1 out of every 10 kids gets that. So I'm incredibly good. I'll tell you one story. So because Dad was always, he was ADD before ADD was a thing, right? But he had a pretty cool life, because he started out. He was from Mount Isa originally, and way up in the country. And his dad owned a safe company. And one day he dropped one of the safes on his toe and like pancaked his toe, and he couldn't walk for like a year. And so Dad had to take over the business, and then he realized that there was a market for, this is before a video camera, but like convex mirrors, the big circular mirrors. And so he started installing all of those, and then they moved to the Gold Coast, and then video started coming online and like the sensor alarms. And because he already had all the contacts, he just went back through and resold, because he could sell and all of that. And so he actually did quite well, but he just hated crawling through. He hated dealing with security guards, and he hated crawling through roofs. So he sold that business, but did I think it was to Chubb for a couple mil. And he started a satellite company. So literally launching satellites into space, and which is just why not? He's the man. But we also did, there's another story for another time, but we also did lose everything. And we had to move from Bermuda, that's where I got the accent, to America. but he couldn't get a green card because it was really hard to get work in America if you were an immigrant. And so we literally went from living in mansions to literally being in like a dingy back alley hotel, and we were getting government food stamps because in America they don't just give you dole like Australia. Australians get it pretty good, right?
Yeah, bro.
But they literally give
go
you.
buy my crack. Can't swap a food stamp for that.
Oh yeah, but so you literally get these like receipts almost, and you've got to take them in.
Yeah, man.
And we were getting donations from like Salvation Army and stuff. Like it was like a total difference in life. And I've definitely learned a lot from having both. And I've grown a lot from the experience, and I think they, the family has as well.
Yeah.
But I remember right as he started the satellite company, one of the engineers, and you know what engineers are like, very task focused people. And I was always like I was a daydreaming kid. I was, and I still am to this day.
Yeah.
Right. And and Dad and I, like, I didn't even used to get read bedtime stories. Dad and I would like make them. So we'd go to bed at like, be like bedtime at like 7, and from 7 to like 7 to 8, we would just like ad-lib stories together. So I've always been like bred to have this imagination.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking to one of the engineers, and he was super condescending. He was one of those guys with a big white mustache, white beard, kind of like a skinny Kenny Rogers. And just in the way that, people, older people who don't have kids condescend kids.
Yeah.
Bent down and goes, "Oh, okay. Hey, little Barratt, like, what do you like to do?" And I was just really earnest. I said, "I love to daydream."
Yeah.
And he started laughing at me, and not in like a polite laugh, like a really, okay, he's going to be a slacker then, like a judgmental laugh. And I'd never experienced judgment in my life to that point. I was only like 5 years old. And I remember Dad kind of realized what happened. He politely ended the conversation, and he moved me around the corner, and he took a knee next to me and got on my level. And I was looking at him in the eyes, and he goes, "Don't worry about it. Guys like that will never understand guys like us. People like that will never understand people like us. It's fine. Keep dreaming." And for the rest of my life, I could write a book one day called Keep Dreaming. It's just.
And you have written a few books, haven't you?
I have actually, yeah. So yes, but I think in terms of confidence, I think having a dad, best thing ever, who would love me unconditionally no matter what I did, and would tell me no if I was being an idiot.
Yeah.
And if you have kids, or if you're planning on having kids, best advice I can give you, which take it with a grain of salt because I don't have kids yet, but starting at the end of the year hopefully. But literally those are the two things that got me to being confident and proficient, was just knowing I can screw up as much as I like and I'm still loved.
Yeah.
And here are the rules to function in society.
Huge, bro.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that. So you've always been a bit of a leader as well. I guess with what you're doing with work now, you're not just, I guess, in the business, you're also part of the business still. How did you start to develop that culture within your workplace, and then I guess start to create more leaders within your workplace as well?
Well, it came out of necessity, because the cool thing about direct sales, door to door, shopping centers, that kind of stuff, is the sales are kind of capped. Like you're only gonna, I mean, you can screw it up, but the average output per person and profit per person isn't really going to change. And so what's really interesting about it is that, let's say you make X amount per person in your team. Well, the way that you grow your profit as a business and, put yourself in a better financial situation is by growing the headcount.
Yeah.
And so recruitment, the most successful sales companies are the biggest sales companies, right? As long as they have recruitment KPIs, they've got to be
talent as well, right?
Well, you've got to be performing to a certain degree before. Some people love throwing on staff right away. And you see it especially with the kind of companies that don't pay a base, where it's full commission, which nothing's wrong with full commission. I when I was fighting, I was better after I got hit in the head. And so when I started selling, and I started on full commissions, getting to work and being on $0, that was my punch in the head. All right, I'm in a fight.
Bit of a hard knock, right?
Yeah, well, but it woke me up every day, and I was ready to play. There was no coasting. And I don't disagree with full commission, but I think it makes it too easy for narcissistic leaders, ones who transparently don't care about any of their staff. It's easy for them to just sell a bullshit dream and basically pyramid scheme it. And so, and because obviously we pay a full-time salary, and so that's where you've got to be. That's that hire slow, fire fast kind of model, and there is a real art form in maximizing your growth without ruining your culture or letting your sales drop. But it came out of necessity, because we couldn't get past. I tried so hard. I couldn't get past 10 guys for like a year.
Yeah.
And which, and for me, I'd always kind of been very, it's like, okay, set my mind to it, let's go. But, we went to, we just kept dipping between, we'd go all the way up to 11 and then back down to 7 and all the way up to 12 and then back down to, and I realized the problem was that I was doing too much. And not that I'd ever had a problem delegating, because that's why a lot of other business, especially when I do coaching with other businesses, most of them just struggle to let things reflect on them poorly.
Yeah.
And it's like, but they're only going to do it 70% as good as you, because it's not their business,
yeah,
right?
Exactly right.
Let alone the competency involved to get you to where you are in the first place. But if it's a non-limit, resource, like if it's like sales, for instance, well, 2 people doing 70% is 140%.
Yeah.
And so just understanding that it's okay to give a little bit in terms of quality if you can maximize the quantity. It doesn't mean that you want to throw quality out the window.
Yeah.
But I think that that's a really powerful thing for people to understand. So but it wasn't the delegation for me that was the issue. The issue was that I loved being the hero all the time. I loved being the person that would come in and save the day. And and it was an ego thing. And I was young. I think I was sort of 27 at the time.
Yeah. How old are you now?
32.
Yeah.
Yeah, 33 soon.
About 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's a while ago now. But maybe I was 28 when we were going through all this. And so I really did struggle to, the analogy that I use when I teach it to the guys now is I said, you can either be Hercules or you can be Phil, right? Have you ever seen the Disney movie Hercules before?
Nah, not for a long time.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
You've got a kid. Come on, you gotta show them the good stuff.
They don't watch that shit anymore. They watch YouTube. I don't want to watch Disney. Don't put Stan. I don't want to watch YouTube.
They don't have the attention
I don't want
span.
to watch you play. Watch other kids playing with their toys. I want to watch you watching Disney shit. Watch the shit that I grew up with. Do it for me.
Do it for me.
You're going to disappoint your father.
But the analogy I use, because Hercules is obviously the hero, right?
Yeah.
And he's the one that saves the day.
Yeah, of course.
But in the story, Philantides, I think it is, or Philantides, he's played by Danny DeVito. He's like the half go.
Yeah.
All his job is
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. And he trains the heroes. And what you've got to understand is once you're done as a seller, when you've moved into sales management or even as sales leadership, and you can kind of do both, the limelight isn't yours anymore, because every win that's yours that you don't give away, that's confidence that you're getting that they should be getting.
Yes.
And they need it much more than you need it.
Yes.
And so that's one of the sayings I always say is as far as leadership and management, is you've got to own your losses and you've got to give away your wins. Once you get to that level where you don't need to prove anything anymore, is something goes wrong, even if it's not my fault, how can I find a way to blame myself for it? And if something goes right, how can I find a way to blame someone else for it?
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest thing for me, was understanding that I had to have an ego check. And once I got rid of that and started, if people would ask me a question, I started reversing it and like Uno Reverso back onto them. Yeah. And it's like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. What should I do? And in order to let them get that credit, I'd go, well, what do you think you should do? And I started very quickly realizing they knew the answers. Sometimes they just weren't confident enough to say what it was. Right. And once you hit them with great idea, right? And sometimes they're going to screw up the first two. So you're going to go, well, what do you think you should do? And they go, maybe this. Okay, but what else? What else do you think might be a good idea? Just not in like a you're wrong, but like let's keep brainstorming.
Let's keep going.
And they go, this. Okay, how would you do that? Oh, well, I'd do this, this, and this. Okay, awesome. Great idea. Let's do it. And then you do it. And then I'd tell everybody. I'd be like, but you should have seen Ben. Ben just did this, this, and this like a pro. It was awesome. Now, all of a sudden, where's your level, your ability to lead gone from where we started? And so it's building people's confidence in their own decision-making and building their confidence in their ability. And that's what took me from 10 guys to now 42.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge, bro.
Yeah, it was cool.
That was cool. So, in other words, you're building confidence in other people, which then helps them to become better leaders.
Yeah, that's 90% of leadership is building their confidence in their ability to do the right things. Like if you build their confidence in their ability to do the wrong things, you're going to get a bigger problem on your hands.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and that's tricky too, because where a lot of especially budding sales teams really screw up is they'll have a sales stud who is just a full-blown narcissist and does all the wrong things, has terrible customer feedback, terrible quality, cuts all the corners. When you're around, they're talking shit behind your back, right? And they're so fear of lost by this person, because most companies can't recruit for shit. They think they know, but they don't know at all.
Yeah.
And so they just don't want to lose this person, and they don't realize that them giving that person the praise that they require so much, because narcissists need constant reassurance that they are who you want them to know you are, or who they are. And so you end up rewarding those negative behaviors. Now you got a whole team of people that do the wrong things, and it's very hard to fix it, the whole system that's broken, rather than just excising one person and then revamping the quality.
Yeah. Man, something that kept coming up then was talking about narcissists in business. When was the first time you experienced that for yourself?
I was trained by one, right? So I got to see it and it was really, I learned some really good things, because the manager the guy that was running the company, right? I mean, I was an independent contractor, but the guy that was, for all intents and purposes, was my boss, was this Eastern European guy. Yeah. Him and I butted heads a lot, because he was one of those guys who everything was a sale, and you can tell that he was selling you on things. And he'd use these really, does that make sense to you? And everything was hand gestures about how he was going to pay him extra or put cash in your pocket. It became like a bit of a joke, because, that speaking to him, you could kind of see what he was saying by the gestures he was using.
Breeding.
Yeah, and so I've seen you're never short of narcissists in sales roles. Yes. But the guy that trained me just had no sense of integrity, right? And didn't care who he was putting through, or who could afford it and who couldn't. And even just seeing the two things. Number one, because I'm very good at seeing, okay, I'm noticing all of that. I don't want to do that, right? And a lot of what I've learned from how to lead isn't just stuff that I've seen that I like. It's, I never want to be like that.
Yeah.
But I also saw how expertly he was managed by the guy that was our manager, right? And one thing in particular, because those kind of guys, they're very hard to pin down with criticism. Yeah. And it was the coolest performance evaluation I'd ever seen, and he actually got me into the office to watch him do it. And he just drew this line down the middle of the whiteboard, and then just put a minus on one side and a plus on the other side. And he goes, "What do you do?" I don't want to use his name, but he goes, blank. What are the things that you do well? What are the things that you're adding value to the business with? Mm-hmm. He goes, I make tons of sales. Okay, you make a lot of gross sales, right? What's your quality like? Oh, I mean, who cares? Our clients care, right? They, people
that buy from us.
Yeah.
People that we're serving.
So I'll give you gross sales, sure, right? What else? Oh, I dress well. Okay, cool. You dress well. What else? Well, and he just thought that was all he had to do. He goes, okay, well, let's look at some of the things you're not doing well. And he ended up bang, 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 bang. And that was my first lesson, is when you're dealing with either narcissists or just outright bull type personalities. Yeah. You just have to present them with overwhelming data. Because if you give them one or two things, they're going to prove you wrong on those one or two things. Yeah. But you give them more than like 7 things they've clearly done wrong. Undeniable. Yeah, just like, see you later. No chance. And so that was a good lesson on how to deal with them. But the best thing you can do with a narcissist is get them as far away from the things you care about as possible.
Sounds like you've had a personal experience with them as well.
I'm from the Gold Coast. If you don't date a few, I know
that feeling, bro. I know that feeling all too well.
Yeah, but that's because you get, it's the reason those guy or girl. I mean, not for me. I was an all girl for me, but to each their own, right? But look, you're a good looking guy. Don't get me wrong, but you see girls have relationships with guys that have this problem, and guys have relationships that it's that ex they keep going back to, or that that toxic person. There's 2 causes of a toxic relationship, right? Usually both, but can be one at a time. One is called random intermittent reward, and the other one is called a sunk cost theory, right? Yeah. And so this is actually really interesting, right? Because you'll be able to relate to this
stuff,
right? And so the idea of random intermittent reward, it's one of the top dopamine producing activities your brain can undertake, right? The first one is meth, right? Because it just releases a ton of dopamine.
All about that.
Oh, do you?
that.
But the other one, so random intermittent reward and positive feedback loops are your other 2 main ones, right? So positive feedback loop is like, and this is like when you get a new video game and you learn something and then it works and you're even more excited to learn the next thing, which is why like jobs in sales can be so fun, or like when you start doing a new sport, or anyone that's ever done jujitsu and they become like the athletic equivalent of a vegan, where they just tell you all you talk about is jujitsu around them, even though you've never done it.
Skydivers, boxers, like all the above.
Right. But it's because you're learning something something, it works, you're getting better, so you just get more excited each node that you hit. That's called positive feedback loop. So that's really useful if you're running sales teams, you always want to be teaching skills all the time because
in increments, right? Like you obviously don't want to give them the whole pie all at once.
Yeah. And there's a real art to that as well. But because it's how much can you demand of people, but how much are they going to retain?
Right.
So you got those positive feedback loops is good, but the other one that's really produced a lot of dopamine is random intermittent reward, where you perform the same action, but it gives you a different reward each time. Which is why when they train like dogs or dolphins, they'll give you a small amount of treats, they'll give you a lot of treats, they'll give you no treats, and you don't know how much because it's very dopamine producing.
Doing it just hoping for that one reward.
Same reason people get hooked on the pokies. Same reason like people get hooked on gambling because it's that random. You hit the same button, but it's also that's why like most social media. How do you scroll? You pull it down like a slot machine, and it gives you something new, which hooks you on the phone. That's why if you ever want to not go cold turkey on social media, but at the very least curb your appetite for it, get rid of the apps and just use it on your like browser, like Safari, because they don't have the same functions. So you just look at it and you're like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I'll use them on my computer for about 5 minutes. I'm on my phone for hours. It's
because they're designed to track you.
But it's literally so addictive, like you said.
It's because that random intermittent reward. And then you look at relationships, right? I'm giving you all this attention. I'm giving you this time. I'm giving you this money. I'm making these sacrifices. And sometimes you give me nothing. Sometimes you treat me like shit, right? But sometimes you say thank you and you make me feel seen and loved. It's addictive. It's very, especially for people who themselves don't feel like they deserve to be loved. They crave people who like, that Oedipal, the opposite sex parent.
Looking for what they're missing themselves and someone else.
And a lot of times it's from a avoidant father for girls or an avoidant mother for men will cause that same need in they chase avoidant partners for that reason or emotionally unavailable partners. And so it's that random intermittent reward is really dangerous for relationships. And the other one is sunk cost, right? And so in business, if I've started a project, right? And I've just been pouring money into it, but it's just not been producing. And I look at the projections and I see that it's very unlikely this thing is actually going to take off. It's very tempting to want to keep investing in it because of how much you've already invested, time, money, effort that you've invested.
Again.
Yeah, sure, right? Or businesses, but the temptation is omnipresent that you want to keep it going because you don't want to close that loop, right? And where the smartest thing to do is cut your losses and put your money and effort into the thing that's producing.
Yeah.
And relationships are very similar. If you spend all this time with them, you've made all these memories, you've committed all these things, right? That's now a sunk cost. And so that's why you'll get those difficult relationships is because you're getting those random intermittent rewards from not knowing what you're going to get, i.e. dating crazy people, right? But there's also benefits to dating crazy people too, which I'm not going to talk about.
Definitely not.
I think you can.
You're an engaged man now, so.
No, I am. I very much am. And so you'll find that having that addiction in the relationship while simultaneously feeling like you owe it more because you've spent so much time with that person. That's what keeps you hooked on the people that you shouldn't be with. That's your toxicity.
Yeah, so once again, come back to narcissists. That's obviously how they keep people controlled.
Well, that's because they're inherently that way. But you got to remember what they also do. What narcissists and relationships also do is they put you down all the time. They nothing will make me go off like a mate, like a male mate, is if I see those like long marathon "you're a piece of shit" text messages that they send to girls. That's right away.
Love bombing even. Like same. Like they send the big messages after having a big fight and. It's like the love bombing, so sending lots of like "I love you," "I miss you," this, that stuff. Like,
they get it. They get it. Narcissistic people, male or female or what have you, like they're very good at knowing when they're about to lose the person, and then can hook them back in. It's the same as a toxic ex partner hitting you with an "I miss you" when they see you start getting comfortable. They hear that you're with someone else. So it happens.
Dude,
like,
100%.
Yeah, but I think it's I've gotten very good at spotting the tendencies, which is do they need constant reassurance and praise, right? Do they not care about anything to do with you? Are they insanely insecure when other people are brought up? Right? They are incredibly jealous, right? And it all just comes down to them deep down knowing that they're not good enough and convincing
Feeling that they're not
themselves,
good enough,
lying to themselves about it first, rather than building on who they could be and developing their empathy.
Owning their shit.
Yeah. Although, you want to know something really cool?
Fucking oath.
So, look, I'm very, very nerdy with brains and stuff. And I
know, bro. This is another reason I want to get you on here, bro, because I love this shit.
Yeah. It's getting me to shut up is the tricky part, right?
That's right.
But,
we'll cap it.
but so there was this really, really interesting book I read called Mindsight.
I think you've told me about this book before, maybe.
It's by a psychologist called Daniel Siegel, and basically it's just a rough run through of what each part of the brain does and all of that. But it was the idea that you could actually cross train those parts of your brain, and so this is really, really cool. So we had one of my staff. He was diagnosed by a psychiatrist with clinical narcissism, right? And because he was an unbelievable seller for obvious reasons, because he doesn't take the rejection on, he's got a high motor, he's got something to prove, right? Dipped his pen in company ink many times in terms of relationships, so we've had to pull him up on that. But he's got a wonderful partner now. But with that diagnosis, we realized, okay, well, you theoretically shouldn't be able to run a team. And I didn't say I'm I'm always careful not to be that high school teacher that says you're not going to be anything.
You'll never be anyone,
but we steered him more towards just selling and pace setting and away from building. He goes, no, I want to build. I was like, well, we're going to need to address this. He goes, yeah, there's no cure for it. There's no actual cure for it. And in this book, I read that if you understand what each part of the brain does, most parts have multiple functions, can do multiple things, and stimulating that area by using those functions will help that whole area strengthen. So a good example of this is like if I do bicep curls, right? If I do a bicep curl, just like an isolated bicep curl, and maybe I do 20 kilos for however many reps, right? Now
bro, you're pretty strong.
Thanks, bro, appreciate it, right? But if I do inside grip chin-ups, which is a back exercise, right? It's for your back. If I do that every day for 6 months and then I bicep curl again, am I going to be able to curl more?
Yes.
Absolutely, because I'm still engaged, even though it's not a bicep exercise, I'm still engaging that part of my body, right?
So it's the same with the brain, is it?
Well, this is where it's really interesting because it's very hard to practice empathy if you don't have it, right? It's a tricky thing to do.
Yeah, man.
But that far right side of your brain is responsible for what's called autobiographical memory. Okay. So the way that a memory will process, so something that happens to you will process, is it'll occur. Your limbic system will notice it first. It'll go through your reptilian brain, your cerebellum, and your brainstem, which is your just your base existence, breathing, all of that.
Limbic brain, right?
Limbic is the second layer. Right, so you've got your reptilian brain, you've got your mammalian brain, which is your limbic system, which is your amygdala, your hypothalamus, and your hippocampus. Yep. And the hippocampus is responsible for memory, amygdala for fear, hypothalamus for like aggression, horniness, which is oddly enough tied together, but that's another chat for another time. And it'll filter through your hippocampus into your right brain through what's called your autobiographical memory, and then across into your factual memory in your left brain, where it's just happened now and it's a memory that happened. And a good example of autobiographical memory is or a factual memory, the left brain one, is I broke my arm in 2013. Right? But autobiographical, it's experiential. So I was jumping on the trampoline and I slipped and I was upside down and then I put my hand out and I just felt this searing pain and heard this crack, right? That's experiential. And so
talking about the experience, like it's reliving the experience.
Basically, but they're living it as it happens, right? And so, and this is really interesting because in order for it to be at peace because if it doesn't get past the hippocampus, it doesn't have a sense of time attached to it. It doesn't have a timestamp, which is why people get PTSD. Because when people go through severe trauma, their hippocampus actually shuts off and refuses to take in the memory. And it lodges in the limbic system where you're
blockage, right?
100%. And it can be varying degrees of trauma. It can be stuff that happened to you as a kid, can be stuff that happened in the military, can be, all sorts of, it can be something bad that happened to you through the day. You're probably not likely to shut off completely, but it's also why you never want to, if something bad does happen to you, you don't just want to bottle it up and keep it to yourself, because if you never process it, you're constantly having to relive that emotion and that fear.
Coming up for you, right?
Yeah, and the answer,
triggers and traumas.
Exactly, which is why a lot of PTSD treatment now, what they do, they just feed you a bunch of pingers. They give you clinical grade MDMA.
But blue apples.
Same thing. Oh, jeez, right? But
the green mitsies.
Yeah, they feed you. They'll give you MDMA, And what that does is that it caps how sad you can feel or how panicked you can feel, because it's a euphoric drug.
And then get you to relive that
And
memory.
get you to, and what that does is it processes that out into the right brain and then across into the left brain. And that's why it's so effective.
I've got to take more MDMA.
Yeah. just block it. Remember, we're old now, so you got to block out the rest of your week.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
literally, bro. The recovery's not like
I can't do drugs, man. I've got nothing against drugs, but 90% of my job is me being happy and encouraging.
Yeah, so
good luck.
Take your dopamine and your endorphins away.
Oh, good luck trying to do that on a come down.
Yeah,
so it's not worth it, right? But that's why. But the really interesting thing is, like, how do you engage that right part of your brain to pull those memories out? It's journaling. It's why journaling's so powerful for people. Which, not to plug your
Quick plug for the happier, healthier you journal.
Right? But it actually, I didn't even, you're welcome, right? But what it does is all the things that go wrong in your day, it gives you a chance to suck them all out and actually, write almost like a pensieve in Harry Potter. You just pull them out.
Yeah, it's
and now
that subconscious out and putting down a paper so you can process.
And they process and they don't hurt you. That's why it takes that weight off your shoulders. Yeah. It's the same reason, and guys are really rubbish with this. Girls are so much more in tune with their emotions. It's the same reason your girlfriend will get angry at you because you didn't ask how her day was when you see her. Because she needs to get it out, and she knows that if she talks about the day, all the little things and the implications of it come out. And the best thing you do, just good at random advice for good boyfriends. Not that I'm like a perfect fiance, but if you're talking about how your partner's day was, you only need to do it for about a minute or two. But just chime this one in. And how'd that make you feel? Yes, and now you've just halved the amount of time that you have to listen to them. Because I got ADD, like I'll do my best. But the problem is, especially because like male storytelling is very, this happened, this happened, this happened.
Yeah, whereas girls is just like...
it's like, do you remember, you know my friend Sue? Well, her partner, Brad, who you haven't met him yet, but he's lovely. You'd really like him. He was out at the grocery store and they ran into Sue's ex's dad. And I'm like, I don't know any of these people. Why you get like,
and then the dog got involved.
Yeah, it's not, but that's just because that's them processing how they feel, and that's why a good boyfriend is a present boyfriend, because I'm just paying attention to you, and so if you've got ADD, you're definitely at a real setback to be a good partner, but it just means you got to work it a bit better, But what we did with this rep, right, is I just got him journaling, because that activates that autobiographical memory is a right brain function. And so getting him to journal every single day for 6 months, he actually developed the tactical empathy, not perfect empathy, but being able to at least understand why people feel how they feel, and understanding to at least be a little bit more aware of people's emotions. He's now got 8 guys on his team. He's making about $3,000 a week. Yeah. Which is crazy. And it was literally just it was getting him to do, to get him to do, chin-ups to get his biceps stronger. Yeah. That was the brain. The brain metaphor.
His brain,
yeah. Which isn't that fantastic? Like it's
amazing, bro.
Yeah.
So for someone maybe dealing with a narcissist, or I guess that has someone that they think might be narcissistic in their life, what advice would you give for them to deal with that person?
Run. Right. There's nothing. It's very, very hard to especially because what the kind of people they generally end up with are people who are low or high agreeableness and high neuroticism. So people that are generally get upset more or just want other people to be happy. They're the people that are going to get taken advantage of the most. And so they're naturally going to end up with people they can take advantage of. And you can try and get them to journal every day. That's the other alternative that you could maybe do. But they're specialists in using people. How are you not going to get used? It's just going to be too taxing and too draining. And the temptations, especially if you're dating them, if all your friends are like, you got to leave them, the temptation is always to immediately defend them, because there's a very paternal, maternal instinct to protect those you love. And you say, well, no, you just don't know the real them.
Does that come back to that closed loop, open loop sort of thing we were talking about before?
Kind of. But it's also like you really, every time your friends tell you, that's one thing I've also learned is if you've got a mate or a girl, like a girlfriend or guy friend that's in a bad relationship, you can just be there. You can listen, but you can't give them advice, and you can never talk poorly about that person because you entrench them in the defense of that person more. You don't know the real them. It's like, yeah, cool. Do you know what? Hitler had a girlfriend and a dog. I'm sure he was a great cuddler. It doesn't excuse that they're a piece of shit. Like everyone's a good person when things are going well and they're watching Love Actually, cuddled up on a couch. You know, like
but what about 3 days deep on a bender?
Yeah, where they lost their phone. Yeah, cool. You know, like so. Yeah, so it is my sincere advice is run. Like
get away from shit.
And if they're friends, and you can spot narcissistic friends because they're the ones that don't want to see you win. And it's like, cool. But if you're hanging around if you're hanging around other people that don't want you to win, what's your likelihood of winning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So 42 guys on the team at the moment with Efcomm.
It does fluctuate. It's it's a much we've got 6 times better turnover rate than the rest of face-to-face industry. So the average person normally stays with us for 292 days when the average in face-to-face is like 60 days.
Math, you've got the stats.
Yeah, but it is so you're not going to keep everybody because so it's meant to be a stepping stone job for people. And I love that. Some people stay with us and build great careers. Other people learn the things they're meant to learn and then they go on and do what they're meant for. Who am I to step in the way of their path? Yeah. But it is so right now we're on 42, but that could be 50 next week. That could, probably not as much, but it's like a stock projection chart. It's like up, down, up, down.
Linear progression.
Correct. Yeah.
So you've just opened in New Zealand as well.
Yeah.
You were saying before about, I can't remember if it was actually off air or on air, but about not wanting to actually step away from the business. That's not your purpose. You actually want to still be in the business and, I guess, functioning as its leader. Yeah. How does that look in the next 10 years for you with Efcomm and, I guess, with now, about to get married? I shouldn't say about to, but being engaged and
we've got the wedding date. We got it's the 9th of February. So
fuck yeah, dude. It's
gonna be cute. Yeah, I'm ready.
Up soon. But then obviously trying to fit kids and having a family and everything into that, and also being an entrepreneur. How does that all fit into your life?
I'm very lucky that again I've been able to build very autonomous leaders that don't need me. I'm not micromanaging. I'm not out here saying hey, do that wrong, do that wrong. Most of my job now is just evaluating and helping people. So I'm either figuring out how do we get you more fired up about your goals, or how do we make what you can achieve here align with what you're doing. And sometimes that also means if I realize that what they really want they can't get here is telling them to go find something else. Yeah. But aligning them is a big one. Evaluating them is a big one as well. Seeing the things that they're doing well and need to do more of, things that they're doing, that they're deficient in, areas that they could actually improve in, and helping them get the right habits in place. Following up is a big one as well, because a lot of times you'll give people advice, and if you just leave them alone, they'll stop doing it after a few days. So immediately after I have like a mentoring session with someone, I'll hang up and I'll go, hey Siri, set a reminder for 3 days from now at midday, and they go check on Davo to see how his habit's growing with XYZ. Yeah. Because you do need follow up on people. That's something I've gotten a lot better at this year.
Thank God for Siri.
Oh, she's the goat. She's the best. Yeah.
When she listens.
And then a lot of time, and sometimes it's about picking up the pieces if people fall down. It's a human business. And I think that's why so few people do it. Because, so few business people try and start door-to-door businesses, because it's very hard, and you've got to that's a great barrier to entry for the companies that already know how to do it well, because it's if you haven't done it, it's very, very hard to get it going. Yeah. And but inevitably people are going to have too many things just pile on them, and you can see it in their performance. You can see it in their maybe in their numbers, or how their team's going, or sometimes just in their face. They're smiling, but you can see it's that dead in the eyes smile where they're like, and
hate my life.
Yeah. And you just pull them up. You're all good, and again they'll say yeah, but they'll breathe in for so like, yeah. It's like, no, you're not.
How are you really doing?
No, you're not. Come on, get out of the office. Let's go. Come on, let's chat. Right. And what I do, so what I do as far as that I call it a decompression. Right. And I teach all my guys how to do it now as well. Because generally when things are going wrong in your life, it's not just one thing that's bothering you. It's this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. And your brain will stack them all on top of each other like they're one big predator that's trying to kill you, one big tribal enemy that's all trying to hunt you down. And you begin to get stressed out, and you got all that cortisol, so you're not sleeping, you're not eating well, so your routine's now out of whack, and everything's compounding. And you don't fix it by trying to fix them all. And sometimes your brain will just try and trick you that it's only this one thing that's going wrong.
Once you unpack it, you realize it's a layer and layer and layer of things, like an onion.
And that exactly. And this is all I do is I sit them down and I just go, awesome. what's stressing? What's weighing on you right now? And they'll go, well, all of this stuff. Yeah, I know, but what in particular? What?
It's the one thing.
And they'll go, okay, this. Okay, what else? Well, this. And this is where a lot of people go wrong, is they'll say it and they'll try and fix the thing. What you're trying to do is you're trying to pull all of them apart and then fix them one by one.
Yeah.
So I'll go, what's going on? They go, oh, money's a bit tight. My dad's really sick.
Yeah. So
I'm not making enough time for my partner. Right. And I'll go, what else? And I'll try and get at least seven. And that's because normally they'll struggle at around maybe 6 or so, 5 or 6. And I go, yeah. And I go, anything else, anything. And I go, oh yeah. And then it's this big thing that's like ruining their life. And that's yeah. And it's, here we go. Right. And then I've got them all. And then I can go, okay, well, money situation, right? What do you need? Oh, I just got my car service. And sometimes I'll just be like, yeah, here. I don't care. Like, sweet.
My car service, bro. Like, just quietly. No.
Not all the time, but sometimes it's like, okay, well, what's going on? Well, I'm not making, the money's not there. Okay, well, you're making enough sales? No. Well, have you been educating? Have you been resharpening your skills, knowing that you forget a lot of things? I go, not really. Okay, can I set you this little homework? Can you do it? Okay, so we're going to improve the money by doing this. They go, yeah. Okay, dad's sick, right? What's the most you can do here? What's the most you can do? Well, you can't control whether they're sick or not, but you can see them every Sunday.
Yeah. Be present, be there with them. Yeah.
Perfect. Partner, not getting enough time with my partner. It's like, well, you got to know if you're dating somebody in a demanding job where they can make a lot of money. If you want to date someone rich, you're going to have to date someone busy.
Yeah.
Like the idea of having someone that's just going to have free time to give to you all the time and be sustainably successful. Good luck.
That comes back to their values as well. Especially people that are in business. One of their highest values is always going to be business, and usually comes before the relationship, unfortunately. And a lot of people can't deal with that.
But a lot of the time, and what I see, not that I'm much of a relationship coach, but it's this. They're exactly what we're talking about. They're not being present. They're not making time. You as Jordan Peterson, one I stole, is you do 1 90-minute date a week. Yeah. Right, where you're not checking your phone and thinking about, and you're with them for 90 minutes, and then once a day for 60 seconds, you ask them how their day was. And again, I've gotten good at going, okay, and how'd that make you feel? But sometimes I'll vary it up so she doesn't know that that I'm doing that every time. We're like, okay, and what's kind of the emotional impact of that, or what's the you can change it up every couple of days, but just letting them know, let them feel heard and seen and important to you. 1 minute a day times 7 days is 7 minutes plus 90 minutes. So it's 97 minutes a week. You will have an incredible relationship unless you have a partner that has problems that they haven't solved on their own.
Yeah.
And you can't fix that. You can't fix that. That is for a professional to fix.
Yeah.
Right. But neither here nor there, right? Once you then pull all of those individual components apart, then you can conquer them. And it's like at the end of it, they're like this new person, and they're like, wow. And that's really most of my time now, besides walking into the offices and just being able to, because it's your business, that's off. And then you triage them. Okay, what are the 2 to 3 most important things they're doing wrong? And then I'll get the manager in and go, hey, so you up for some feedback? And you always want to ask them if they want feedback, because sometimes they don't. And they'll be like, here's what you're doing well. Is there anything else that's working for you at the moment? Because you've got to get them in that receiving mindset. And I go, okay. Now I did notice a couple of things I would do slightly differently. Is that all right? And they go, yeah. And I go, you sure? Because the salespeople especially, they've got that defensive alarm. Once you trip that defensive alarm, they're not listening.
They're tuned out. They're gone.
Yeah, well, they're thinking about what to respond with rather than going thank you and then learning from it.
Yeah.
And so I'm always reading like Terminator, just scanning if I've set the alarm off or not. And then I'll go, hey, look, the dress standard in the room is way downhill. Are we not asking the guys to wear jackets anymore? Are we not asking the people to dress professionally anymore? The girls are wearing whatever. That what kind of image is that setting for the business? What's that doing to create the right kind of pride in the team? And I go, oh, thanks. And normally they'll be grateful for that. And I go, okay, cool. And I noticed, look, we've gone away from teaching skills. We're getting a bit rah-rah. Do you understand why it's important to teach skills all the time? And normally if you trip the alarm, they'll go, no, I am doing it. And it's like, dang. No, yeah, okay. Like, how often are you doing it?
How do you get past that alarm though once you have tripped it?
You just take blame. So I'll just go, look, no. And sometimes you can label it. And you're like, I didn't mean to make you defensive. And they'll just go, oh, no, I'm not being defensive. Okay, cool. So you just say, if I say you something, you'll say thank you, and they go, yeah, because that's the key. That when you say thank you, your brain lodges it as feedback.
Yeah.
So if you've got anyone
You're
that's
grateful for it.
yeah, well, it's also you're actually accepting it, which is the important part. So that's 90% of what I do now. Is I mean, I've still got to be Moses, right? I got to be the guy that's like, hey, everyone, we're going over here, and it's going to be awesome. And they go, yeah. That's 90% of leadership is just being Moses. It's like, hey, this is where we're going. It's going to be awesome, right? And ideally changing something, changing some sort of status quo. That's what people really get behind. But so if I'm going in, I'm painting a picture of the vision. I'm mentoring the people that are, like, obviously you can't get everyone. So I say you spend your time with your racehorses, not your donkeys. It's very tempting to try and fix the person that's always, the car that's always broken. But sometimes the best thing you can do is invest your time into those higher ROI people, where if I give you more of my effort, you're going to give me more of a return, and let those broken ones weed themselves out. Right. So I'm either mentoring, or I'm spotting things wrong, or I'm being Moses. And it's a pretty good way to make a living. I'm not going to lie.
Be Moses.
Yeah, it's not because I'm not. It's none. All of my income now is passive. I don't have to, unless I'm doing speaking gigs, which I love doing.
Yeah.
Everything else I'm doing is passive income, and to do that with a 90% people business, it's you've got to learn all of those little 1%ers, because you're not building a stable building. It's not like it's a tech business where everything's systems that are going to last for 10 years. It's 2 bad days and you can lose half your team.
Literally.
It's you're building sandcastles. You're not building buildings. And so my job, I've just gotten very good at putting on sand and water all the time. And then it's a great business. Yeah. But you got to know what kind of business you're in.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
So, we've spoken about the business, where you're at now. How long is it taking you to actually build a business from, I guess, like the very foundation, we'll call it, or the sand, to where you are today? And what would be one piece of advice you'd give to someone else that might want to build, I guess, a people-based business, or even just start to become more of a leader in their own life?
Yeah. Well, so the business, we started it about 5 years ago, coming up on 6. But it was funny. My whole first year, I just didn't take it. It wasn't a real thing for me. It wasn't like it was just a way to make money. I hadn't committed to it as a career. Yeah. And it was actually, I've got to give credit to my mate Nick Benham, right?
Benham, eh?
Yeah. He's awesome. Well, he taught me most of how to run a team. Yeah, okay. Because I never really had a proper mentor in the business, and it wasn't until I ran out of money, because this is going. I did a bit of work. I think I'd saved about 60 grand, and then I had a bit of personal trauma go on, and heavy duty stuff, and I just stopped working. I just didn't, exactly what we're talking about, rather than processing it, because it was, not to ham it up, but my twin sister killed herself. And so, I'm not one that, I don't like sympathy. I don't enjoy the feeling of other people feeling bad for me. But what happened was, because my family was always so close, my mom, dad, and brother, I knew they weren't going to handle it well. And so I realized that if I was fine, they could turn to me. Yeah. If I was fine, they could turn to me.
So you were the rock for them.
And so I never processed it. And it's that old saying, it's like a splinter, right? If you get a splinter, if you don't pull it out, well, maybe you can, take some painkillers, but eventually that's going to get infected, and you still don't try and fix that. It might turn gangrenous, and then you might lose your leg.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of, rather than processing everything and handling it and letting myself feel everything, because that was it's my best friend. We were born a minute apart, and traveled all around the world together, from a long time. I didn't have a lot of friends but her for a very long part of my life.
Usually traveling and all that sort of stuff.
Well, and it's your twin. Like, it's a very, it's a very weird experience, losing someone you've been with forever. And look, it's not a lot. It's even now, like, birthdays aren't a lot of fun, right? I don't have happy birthdays anymore. But I guess what happened was that it's because I refused to handle it. I just let my life spiral out of control. So I didn't work. I didn't do anything. I was just partying, and I did a bit of writing and stuff, but I wasn't doing anything meaningful with my life. Yeah. And I ran out of money, and I was like, well, how do I? I need to work, and how can I make money quickly? Well, I'm, face-to-face sales. Yeah. And again, shopping centers is always my thing. And Nick offered me basically an ownership position, just the chance to set. I'd had an ABN, and he said, well, yeah, you want to go at ACN on this, but same role, but with more money. And so he gave me a handout and a hand up. He gave me an opportunity to start making money again. But again, I was just I'd work for a week. I'd make enough money to survive for the next 2 weeks without working. And then I'd work again and, repeat the cycle.
Yeah.
So about a year passed. And then I went to a conference, and Nick was one of the speakers. And I don't know if you've been to a sales conference before, but they're a wild time. Yeah, they're a great time. And he did a speech, and he ended it with the story of Hernan Cortez. Have you heard this one before?
No.
And so it was really, it was when everyone was exploring the New World and conquering the New World. And I think it was King Charles at the time, the Spanish king. Yeah. He was conquering all of South America. Okay. Except every time they tried to get Mexico, but the Aztecs were fierce warriors, right? There was even a story of a guy, they cut his hands off because of, he was a warrior, but they cut his hands off. He sewed swords into the stumps of his hand and then came out and fought them some more, right? Like they were just vicious warriors. And every time they'd get there, so that he sent a ship of 5 ships of 500 men, and they'd get their butts kicked, and they had to go back to Spain, and they'd stop in Cuba on the way. Yeah. And obviously Hernan Cortez was in Cuba stationed, and he saw it happening. He sent 1,000 butt kicked back, 2,000 butt kicked back. Yeah. And Hernan Cortez wrote to the king, and he said, "No, I see what the issue is. Give me 500 of your best men, and I'll take it out." Yeah. And so they get there, they beach the ships, obviously, which you're not supposed to do. And he gives each of the 5 generals, he gives them a flaming torch. Yep. And they go, "Well, what do we need these for? It's the middle of the day." He goes, "Yeah, burn the boats." What do you mean burn the boats? If we burn the boats, we can't get it back home. He goes, "Exactly. Did I stutter? Like,
gotta fucking win now."
Yeah, it's like we take this place over or we die. That's it. And what language do they speak in Mexico now, right? And that seeing that speech for the first time, and it's a one that you hear a lot in motivation because it's so powerful.
It's very powerful, man.
But I'd realized at that time, because I was 27 at the time, and I just realized everything I'd done in my life up until that point, when I got bored or when it would get tedious or it would get hard or I would lose, I'd take an L, I would stop and do something else because I'd be good at that thing, and then it would make me feel better. And having never actually committed to something, and I realized I'm 27, I've got to pick I had $16 in my bank account, and I was like, I got to pick something. And, and I was like, well, what's everything out of all the things I've done, which is a pretty diverse set of things to do. I've done, we've all done stuff. Look, we've all done stuff, but I've done some stuff. Right. Yeah. And it was like, well,
I'd love to read your resume.
And so I committed to it, and that was and Rory, I hired Rory 2 days later, who was like...
And you guys used to do MMA together or something?
Yeah, I used to coach him how to wrestle when he was 14 years old. Yeah. And we just always stayed in touch. But it was like the universe just goes, hey, here's the best guy you're ever going to get. And he's, and don't get me wrong, we've got some really talented people, but he's been, like by my side the whole time. For him to be at an ownership level himself and be a partner in the business. What a guy, right? Yeah, But that was when I really just decided, you know what, warts and all, I'm going to take what the future holds for me. Yeah. And I'm going to suck, and I'm going to get my butt kicked, and I'm really going to have to lose, but I'm never going to give up. And that was what took us from the beginning to, and not long after that, Nick had a bit of a crisis within his team. He put his faith in the wrong people. This is again why you don't do business with people you don't trust. Yes. And he got termited, where they basically just rotted the business from the core and took 3/4 of his staff to go and work for them. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm sure he was at fault for to some degree as well. But he then said he had an office, he had somewhat of a doors team, he had, it was almost like, who is the skier? I mean, the ice skater, Bradbury, Steve Bradbury, where he was just there and everyone else fell in front of him and he ended up taking gold medal. That happened. It's like he was the GOAT. He was really, really good at this, but his team collapsed. And he goes, look, someone's going to need to take this door-to-door team on and take the office and all this. And I basically just got gift wrapped this business on a platter, and I just took it by the balls, and here we are.
Here we are 5 years later.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's hectic, eh?
Yeah.
So what would be the piece of advice you'd give to someone that wanted to start their own business out of that?
Look, the best thing you can do is find somebody who's really, really good, not just good, really, really good at what they do that has a life that you'd like to emulate. And upfront tell them you want to learn as much as you can from them in the span of 1 to 2 years, and then start your own business. And because there's all sorts of, recyclable advice that people will give you about starting business. Hey, just be prepared. You're going to lose money for your first year, and then you're going to make a lot. It's going to be hard, and there's going to be you're not. It's a lonely journey. This is all stuff that you open Instagram and you're going to see that.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to give you slightly different advice, which is put your pride aside and realize that you can learn 20 times more not having to learn it yourself. And as long as you are, the way that you get people to help you is you make them feel good by helping you. They give you something good, piece of advice. You say, oh, that's awesome. And more importantly, you use it and they get to watch you level up.
Yeah.
And part of them has an imprint on you. So that's tapping into, a lot of business people have this desire to have like a brand that lives forever, or something that they can build something. That's your survival instinct. That's your instincts of survival trying to keep you alive forever.
In somewhat shape or form, right?
Yeah, that's half of the drive for greatness or leaving a mark. And it's like, and that will apply to you if you show ROI on the effort they give you.
Yeah. Is that something you want for Efcomm, is to, I guess, leave your imprint and I guess have a legacy there?
For me, it's about how many lives can I change. I know that sounds cheesy, but
not at all, bro.
I've already
You're on the podcast for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But it is like I was never that money driven, and I've got more than I ever thought I'd have in my life. And when you amount to some level of success where you have a life that you look back and you're like, wow, I've got, you got money, you've got time, you've got great experiences, you've got great people around you. And it's just like anything. Like if you see a really good movie or you hear a really good song, what's the first thing you do? You show it to your mates.
You share around.
Yeah, bro, you got to hear this one. This is a banger, right?
Man, my housemate does this all the time. I'm literally like forever sending him links. He's sending me links. It's what we do, right?
Yeah. For me, success was just the same thing. I attained it and I was like, let's see how many people I can give this to now. And I think
powerful, bro.
But I'm also in the kind of industry, because there's no actual infrastructure where our growth is at the mercy of our performance. And as long as we're performing, we can keep growing. And so just getting as many people on board who believe in that and want to achieve it themselves and then subsequently give it back to someone else. I think that's again what creates that kind of culture for us.
Cool, man. Now, before we finish up, bro, I want to ask you one last question. Yeah. What is your one biggest goal for yourself right now?
I wish I could say one. I wish I could say one big goal. I definitely want to be a dad. That's up there. Yeah. And it's really funny. We're getting married on February 9th. Yeah. And I'm just nudging her like, when can we start? How quickly should I? Yeah. And she obviously doesn't want to be fat for her wedding.
Yeah.
So
she hasn't mind being pregnant for the wedding?
Look, depends on how good my negotiating is, right? I think she likes the idea of being able to drink at her wedding. Bro. I want to be, but again, it's just like I had the best dad in the world. And if I can be half as good a dad as him, which I feel like isn't necessarily the usual story for a lot of the people you get on the podcast.
Yeah, you get a lot of. This is cool. There's a bit of polarity, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's not to say that I didn't. Like I said, it's not to say that I didn't have my own share of struggles, but. But I certainly didn't have, dad was a bikie and mom was a heroin addict, and I had to.
I feel attacked. Yeah. I'm joking. That wasn't my parents at all. That wasn't my parents at all.
And I think there's.
Love you, mum and dad. Sorry.
No, but I think it is nice to, I see my mates that, and look, it's not for me to judge anybody, but the people that say I don't want kids, it's one of two things. It's either that that they feel broken and they don't feel like they deserve to raise a family because they're going to make broken kids. Which is, and I do see that, and it's like, and it's hard to argue with for some people because it's obviously very personal for them, and I don't mean it in a judgmental way, but you also get people that they're like, no, I like my life, I like having time, I like being able to, I like my career, I like these vacations.
Take away from their life.
Yeah, and I just, to me, and it's, look, I get it because the kids don't exist yet. It's not like you can't be like, oh, but what about these kids like that? But they don't exist, right? It's a tough one to make, but for me, I couldn't think of anything worse. Yes, I couldn't think of a worse life than being 70 with nobody around me. you know, and everyone else is busy, and everyone else is like, you know what it's like. Your mates that got kids, like most of my best mates now have kids, and you see them once every 2 or 3 months. These guys that used to see like 2 or 3 times a week, and that's not going to get better with time. That how distantly spread out seeing your friends are. Yeah. I want to be able to, you know, I would love to be half the, and I know it's going to have its own challenges, but I think the business is going really well. We've got, you know, we're at 4 offices now. We're about to do some pretty big stuff as well, as far as I'm merging with my biggest competitor, which is kind of cool.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so our ability to grow has just tripled, which is really cool as well. So it's going to be busy. There's going to be a lot of work happening. The speaking's, you know, been busy. You know, still I'm looking at writing another book now as well. Like there's a lot of little mini goals, but I think if you took away, if you had to take away all but one of them, I could pass all of that stuff off and have a family and be just fine. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Fucking love it, bro. Trust me, bro. Being a dad it's a game changer, and it's one of the coolest things ever.
You make it look good too.
Thank you, brother.
And you got a kick-ass son too.
So. He's pretty cool, man. He's pretty cool. I'm very lucky. I feel blessed every day because I see some parents out there, man. They're like chasing their screaming kids up and down the shopping center aisles, and I'm just like, man, I want to put that in the bin for you. You know what I mean? So I feel blessed, man. My son Will's amazing, but yeah, it's a game changer, bro. And my son's definitely taught me more about myself than anyone else ever has in my entire life, and that I feel like is a blessing in itself. So you've got all that to look forward to, my friend.
I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you coming on, brother. Thank you, my man.
Thanks, brother.